Hi, and welcome to the Muslim Sex Podcast. This is Dr. Sadadf Lodhi, and I would love for you to leave me a review of this podcast and also to share and like it and share it with your friends, see what they think, and let me know. I would love to shout you out on social media. And also, I would love for you to follow me on Instagram at Dr. Sadaf OBGYN, as well as TikTok. I also have started a YouTube channel at Dr. Sadaf Intimacy Coach. I'd love for you to follow me on all of those channels. And most importantly, I'd love for you to become a patient. I am now accepting telehealth patients for sexual health as well as menopause health in New York and Michigan. So if you are a woman that is looking for a doctor that understands you and can actually take the time to listen to all of your concerns, reach out to me. Reach out at Dr. Sadaf at drsadaf.com. And I would love to see you as a patient. And now for the episode. I'm an American board certified OBGYN, a mom, a Muslim, and I'm talking about sex. This is the Muslim Sex Podcast. Welcome to the Muslim Sex Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sadadf Lodhi, and this episode is everything you need to know about how ADHD can affect intimacy. But before we get into it, the first thing I want to make very clear is that I am not giving any type of medical advice. So if you have any concerns about your health, please speak with your healthcare provider. And if you have any questions about your religion, please ask your friendly neighborhood religious leader. And this is the Muslim Sex Podcast because I just happen to be a Muslim woman that talks about sex. So I am super excited, as always, to have on with me another fantastic guest. And today we have on with us Dr. Diana Mercado. And Dr. Diana is going to introduce herself and let us know what she does.
Awesome. Thank you for having me today. I think this is such an amazing service that you're doing to the community to talk about topics that sometimes we don't want to talk about or we don't realize that they're important to talk about. So thank you for what you're doing. So my name is Dr. Diana Mercado-Marmarosh. I'm a family medicine physician and I'm an ADHD life coach for physicians and healthcare professionals. 3 years ago, I would have never had said those two sentences together because I was somebody who had 200 to 300 open charts and I felt like I had a graveyard of unfinished projects. I was so excited to start them all, but I would never finish them all. And of course, I was in my head about not having enough time and feeling ashamed that I should be doing this, should be doing that, should be doing this. But once I discovered life coaching and I discovered that the pandemic did a good number at bringing that to the forefront, realizing that whatever we were maybe doing, the systems we were doing, could not be sustainable if you weren't around a community that could help you to do everything that you needed to do. And being a primary care physician, I I kept going. I kept seeing patients while some specialists didn't. I never took a break. And part of it was good and bad. It was good because it helped me keep that connection that some people didn't have, right? Because they felt like isolated. But at the same time, it made me realize that I had to be very careful with who was helping me because I didn't accidentally want to get them sick in any way if I didn't know if I was a carrier or what was going on. So that time management piece came at a standstill when I realized, oh my God, I was getting help from this and that and this, and my systems no longer fit. So life coaching helped me to realize that I didn't have to give all my time or my power away to others, that others' thoughts about me didn't need to define my worth, that I could decide how I made things, how I responded to things. And that was life changing for me. So, with that, the time awareness piece, realizing that everybody had 24 hours and what they chose to do with those 24 hours was really up to you. It was like freeing for me. And then realizing that what if you could hack it and what if you could find a way to create time with ease or at will.
Love that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know what people, everyone has those 24 hours, right? So it's up to us to decide what we do with that. That's fantastic. So tell me about a little bit about how you got into the ADHD work a bit.
Yes. So I was diagnosed with ADHD myself during my first semester of med school.
Hmm.
And I didn't really understand it at that point because all I was told was, here's some meds, like you should be okay. At that point, when I was trying to differentiate, I wasn't sure if I was just anxious or nervous or depressed because my dad had just gotten diagnosed with cancer and it was my first year. And so I had this family pressure of wanting to like not let my family down because I was the first one to go to college and now medical school. So it was a lot of pressure. And, and I got told he might live 2 months. So I didn't know what 2 months meant. So that meant flying home. I was in Houston, it was only a 1 hour flight, but if I would have driven, it was 7 hours. So there was just no way. So flying home Fridays, coming back Monday, 5 a.m. So it was the cheapest flight and going back and forth. Anyways, I got finally diagnosed and I was shocked to be diagnosed with ADHD because I didn't even know what ADHD meant. Um, and I was embarrassed and ashamed of it. And again, because I didn't understand and I kept trying to do everything that everybody else was doing. And I remember telling my dean when I got admitted to med school, I said, if you give me the opportunity, I will outwork whoever I need to get to the end result. And I think that's the thing with ADHD, that you don't realize that you are outworking or you're trying to do things 10 different ways. And you don't realize that not everybody else is doing 10 different ways because you just keep going if that's what you're passionate about until you hit it. And remember, I was the first one to do this in my family. So it's not like I had somebody who was mentoring me. And so I just assumed, well, this is what you have to do. If it means I have to, sleep for 2 hours and study for 22 so that I can pass my tests, then that's what I'm going to do. Because, sometimes it was the fear of failure. It was the fear of, oh my God, I just went and signed for how much money, and, and it was all of that. And then I somehow got through it because again, the fear of not wanting to fail and wanting to just do what you needed to. But then I became an attending and they told me, you can't keep coming to the student health. You need to go see your own physician. And when I did, unfortunately, that psychiatrist didn't even give me like more than 2 or 3 minutes of his time and told me, you have ADHD. You should know you outgrow this. You're an adult. You don't need medications. And he like walked out.
Oh
And
no.
to me, that was very, like, traumatic, and
Yeah.
again, I was already embarrassed about it, and so that led to me shutting down or not asking for help or being curious for, like, the next 10 years
Wow.
because as a primary care physician, I looked up to specialists. Like I respected them, and and it was Baylor. I feel okay at Baylor College of Medicine. This is like the epic medicine of the world. Like they should know. Like that's what my mind kept telling me, and I said, okay, well, just suck it up, Buttercup. Like you got this far, you're gonna get wherever you need to. And so I just kept working hard, working hard, working hard, unaware that that meant sometimes no boundaries, that sometimes meant people pleasing, but at the same time, it also meant sometimes thinking outside the box and being outspoken and being impulsive. But because of that impulsivity and you saying out loud what everybody else is thinking, that also meant leadership and that also meant promotions. That also meant, me becoming the chief resident and also being able to become a medical director, at the age of 36. So, like, it also meant other opportunities. But at that time, my internal self talk was always not the best. And so when I finally, through coaching, started to take care of my inner self talk and find tools for not only ADHD, then I saw that there were actually ADHD coaches. So then I tapped into
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
And I didn't see anybody addressing it in the physician's perspective. So I figured I should tap into that because I figured if that was me, maybe there's others out there who felt the shame or embarrassed and didn't want to talk about it.
Sure.
And that's why I got into that.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you're out there helping other women or other physicians also manage ADHD. I mean, that seems very dismissive, having to reach out to a psychiatrist and then, they telling you that you should basically just figure it out yourself and you should have outgrown it and this and that. I mean, that's awful. So I'm sorry you went through that. But, as you know, this is the Muslim Sex Podcast. So I'm wondering if you can give us a little bit of insight as to what ADHD means and what it can mean in a relationship. I mean, both know that when you're highly distracted and not able to focus on something for a long time, that it can really cause problems. So maybe you
Yes.
can talk about that.
So ADHD is a neurodivergent disorder or syndrome, or what you want to think about it. There's four main things. You talk about um, distractibility, impulsivity, hyperactivity, and distractibility. And so the thing is that sometimes it's also misnamed because it seems like you're not going to pay attention, but sometimes it's the opposite. You pay attention to too many things at once, and that gets you into trouble. Like you might be listening to three conversations around you and not to the person right in front of you, and that makes you feel, or you might have this time blindness. And so it's what the things that bring you together in a relationship might be that you're so flexible, you can think of so many different things, you're so spontaneous, and so that brings you together with somebody who maybe has the opposite, right? But then that's also what can bring you apart, because then the other person's like, well, this person's not pulling their weight. Like, we are adults now. Like, they need to be paying the bills. They need to da da da. Why do they want to go for a hike? Why do they want to, like, or why are they late doing this and that? And they're not trying to be late. It's just that there's thousands of things that are fighting for your attention. And sometimes, again, at the beginning, the new relationship, it's all dopamine, it's all sensual, it's all like new candy, right? So it's just amazing. And then you get into the routine of things, and it can become that sex or the friendship or the talk is just, okay, well, one more thing to do in the to-do list, and that can get you into trouble. And while you're in the act of doing something, your mind is also thinking, "Oh my god, did I even put the dishes away, or did I even I forgot to put the dryer, like it's going to smell, it's going to be moldy." So you're like thinking of 10,000 other things instead of being like mindful and, like you just said, present in the moment. And so that's where it can get you into trouble, because with that communication aspect of it, and again, it's not that we don't care, because while I'm talking to you, you are the most important thing, until something else gets my attention. And then you're like, what? How is the phone more important than we were just having a moment? And then you're like, oh yeah. And then you come back and they're like, forget it. And you're like, what? Right? And, or sometimes, like, if you're overstimulated, meaning you're asking too many things, like executive function, when we're talking about ADHD, we're not just talking about paying attention. We're talking about task switching. We're talking about task completion. We're talking about planning. We're talking about time management. So all these things, organization, right? So you see how, if I'm doing something and you come and ask me something else, I might not know which one of those are the priority. So I might drop the more important thing, or you might have thought I already did it and I hadn't even started it because I got sidetracked somewhere else. And so that can cause a lot of miscommunication. Um, Sometimes we don't want to say no, not because we feel like rejected. Sometimes that's the thing, but the other thing is because we really want to do it and we didn't realize we couldn't do 10 things, and other people usually have 3 things in their to-do list, and we had 10 things thinking we could do all of them at once. So you sometimes overcommit. So with this so when you ask me a question, I might answer how I'm thinking, and if you ask me again the same question tomorrow, somebody with ADHD, I might answer how I'm feeling. How I'm thinking and feeling might not match. But if you ask somebody without ADHD the same question today or in 10 years from now, they're going to give you the exact same answer. And you can see how that could be a miscommunication, because the other person can be like, but you just told me yesterday XYZ. And I said, yeah, that was yesterday. They're like, "Oh, forget it. I was paying attention and you didn't listen." And so that again becomes a relation. If you don't understand that, that can become a trigger. Or if you really are working at the top of your game, but that other person still thinks that you're working at your 10% of your game, you can see how you're like, "But oh my god, I'm exhausted. I did everything." And they don't even acknowledge it. And so then you're like, what's the point? So all that can kill the intimacy, because in your mind you're thinking of like, and sometimes when you're a female, I feel like the gender roles unfortunately sometimes like all lay on you, like you need to be the mom, be the nurse, be the doctor, be the lawyer, be the nanny, be like the accountant, like be all the things. And then if you don't have some of this, like, how do I take care of myself? Self boundaries, time for yourself, time to remember you, to slow down enough to take care of you. You're so depleted that that intimacy, even though you want to have it, you're exhausted. Like you're like a magnet with 10 things, and then you're like, oh, and I'm still supposed to look beautiful, right? So we could just do this thing.
No, that's fantastic. No, I totally get it. And I think that all the things you bring up are so important, right? With people with ADHD. And even if you don't have ADHD, I think even if you're very highly distractible, right, you're not able to focus in the moment. You're not able to be present or be mindful in the moment. And that's the whole definition of mindfulness, right? Just being present in the moment without judgment. And when we're not able to do that, when we have so many things that we're thinking about all at the same time, it's so hard to create that intimacy, whether it's emotional or physical or what have you. And there have been several studies that have been done on creating intimacy and to increase, specifically actually, increasing desire and increasing arousal. And for both of those things, the studies have been done, and it shows that mindfulness is what is really needed. And so when you are highly distractible, then, I can definitely see that your arousal would go down, your libido would go down, because you're not able to really focus on what it is that you're doing, because you have so many things on your plate. And actually, to add to what you were talking about with, women and gender roles, and, so many, that you're responsible for, the kids, the house, the food, whatever. There's also studies that have been shown that the uneven distribution of household chores also leads to decrease in libido and decrease in arousal, but specifically libido, because again, just like what you're saying, when you have so many things on your plate, you're not going to feel like you want to be in the mood when you're thinking about the laundry, you're thinking about dishes, you're thinking about Johnny and his play date, and what was for dinner last night, what do I need to cook tomorrow morning, and breakfast and lunch, and this. It's just not going to happen, right? And so increasing that mindfulness and that awareness during the day and trying to practice it really actually helps all different facets of your life. So, I'd love to know, actually, with your coaching, what are ways that you teach individuals how they can be more mindful, or maybe perhaps get a little grasp on their ADHD?
Yes, you brought a very important point up. Like, you don't have to have ADHD to try to implement any of these things that we are talking about, because in this world, there's so many things that are affecting our attention, right? Like Facebook, like Instagram, like the ding on the computer, like Netflix, you name it, right? Everything's like trying
Absolutely.
to catch our attention.
Yes. Hmm.
And in my coaching, actually, I've been very blessed to have the privilege to have helped about 90 physicians in the last 2
Wow,
years.
that's
And
amazing.
I would say about 80% of them had ADHD, but the others didn't. And and the ones that didn't, again, it was the same thing. They're being pulled in so many directions, and they don't realize how important boundaries are, and they don't realize like what is important for them until you ask them, like, okay, what are your strengths? And sometimes we have to get to the point of where, like, okay, if you just had 24 hours to live, what would you do? Because I ask them, what do you do for fun? And they just look at me like blank, and I'm like, no, like, seriously, like, let's say I called you and I look and I were to tell you, hey, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you only have 24 hours to live. What would you do? What would you do if you had a week, a month, a year? And some of them say, not go to work, or some of them say, well, I'll go to the beach, and they all spend time with my family. And then I ask, okay, so what of that, like an attention audit, I call it, like what of that is stealing your attention or stealing your energy or stealing your mindfulness? Because maybe you're not at work 24/7, but you're thinking about work 24/7. You're thinking of those open notes, or when was the last time you dreamed up your family vacation? When was the last time you picked up a book to really read it just for fun, not because you have to go complete a CME thing, right? And so we forget that sometimes we stop dreaming in high school. Like that was the last time that we decided what we wanted to do. So to practice mindfulness, because emotional regulation, it's actually an executive function, and a lot of us
Mhm.
don't realize.
Yeah, no.
And
Mhm.
emotional regulation is so important because everything that we do is because of an emotion. Like, why do we decide to get married? Oh, probably because we think we're gonna have like a partnership, right? Why do we buy that house? Oh, we think we're gonna be in a safe neighborhood. Why did we send them to that college? Oh, well, they're gonna have us. Everything we do is because of an emotion, right? And so sometimes when you don't realize that emotions are just trying to protect you, and they're not, all your emotions are not you, like, because sometimes our brain is really good at being dramatic to try to keep you safe. And when you don't realize that maybe there's a misinterpretation somewhere, then what happens? Adrenaline goes up, cortisol level goes up, and then you wonder why you keep eating everything and why you're so stressed and why you can't lose the weight despite you doing X, Y, and Z, or why you're always like on overdrive. So I tell them to use meditation. I tell them to like turn on a music, dance to Shakira, like go outside, like touch the trees, like walk barefooted. Like it sounds silly, but all those things ground you. And it doesn't have to be like 30 minutes. Like it could literally be 2 to 3 minutes, and it can switch your mindset. And even you just visualizing a task completed, your brain doesn't know you haven't completed it. And so it can already release the norepinephrine and the oxytocin, the serotonin that make you feel good hormones. So if you can worry, you can wonder. I wonder what it would be like to complete the task, right? I wonder how I would feel. So even though our normal setting is thinking negatively, unfortunately, it's just because it's trying to keep us safe. But what if we could turn it around through gratitude or self compassion to make us realize that what we have is still great, ours, and it's still a choice. Like you still decided that job, you still decided that marriage, you still, and you could decide not to take care of your kids if you want. Like you could hire somebody for 24 hours. And so we forget that we always have a choice. and
Yeah.
and emotions and mindfulness. And I really like tapping. I don't know if you heard of tapping. Tapping is emotional freedom technique. It's
Mm.
actually evidence based. It can decrease your cortisol levels by 30 to 40%. And,
Wow.
and tapping, you just literally tap like on different parts, and they're supposed to be where they do the acupuncture in those areas. But I don't know if it's because you're actively doing something that you're not overthinking 10,000 things. With meditation, you're wondering, am I doing this right? Am I not doing it? And so you're constantly, uh, judging yourself. Versus with tapping, it's kind of a mix of affirmation versus saying, like, okay, even though I am really mad, I choose to love and accept myself. And so, like, it just normalizes what it is. It helps you process a feeling, not ignore the feeling, and realize that it only takes 90 seconds for us to process a feeling. But some of us hold on to feelings of fear or anger or judgment or you name it for years. And it's like we're walking around with little like rocks that makes us heavier and heavier. And and sometimes we have to learn to laugh at ourselves because it seems like the end of the world, but then you just realize that, in 5 years, is it going to matter that that just happened, right?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think that it's really important, like what you said, to be able to recognize and to be able to laugh at yourself. I'm really actually intrigued about that tapping. I've never heard of it. So, what is it? You just, when you feel really stressed out, you just tap your forehead, or you just tap different places. You said that you get acupuncture. Is it like a just on your face, or is it on different parts of your body?
So there's 9 different places that you tap at. And
No?
it's interesting. There is an app. It's called the Tapping Solution, but you can also just go on YouTube and type the word tapping for anxiety or tapping for whatever. And like I said, the name of it is the medical name, or the other name for it is called emotional freedom technique. So it's like a type of therapy, but it's self therapy and something you can do yourself. Or, and I tell this to my patients all the time. I'm like, this is better than Xanax, and I'm not going to give you Xanax. I go, because Xanax is short lived, but I want you to walk away with a tool that you can use at any time.
Yeah.
Um, and if you do like it, I think you do like a 2-week trial for free. You just give an email, and if you do like it, I think it's like $69 for a year. So I think it's like a no-brainer. Anyways, I've probably used it like 600 hours since the pandemic because it's really helped me regulate. And the cool thing about it is that they have so many different ones. Like they have some to help you declutter, to help you start overthinking, to help you feel central, to help you lose weight, to help you with your chronic pain, and even for kiddos, like to help them go to sleep, to help with like self compassion, or with kindness, or like. And so I use it for my kiddos all the time because I have a 4 and a 5 year old, and oh my god, if I leave them, they would go to sleep at 11. So with tapping, they know that they gotta relax. And so again, some of them are short, like 3 to 5 minutes, but some of them are a little bit longer. I think 15 minutes or less. And the cool thing is that you can rate it. Let's say you're a 10 out of 10 mad, so you put a 10. And then at the end, when you went through the thing, you rate it again. So maybe you're now at a 6. So it brought you down a level. And it's interesting, as you're going through that process of processing the feeling, another feeling might come up. Like you thought maybe you were mad, but really you were just like sad, or you were disappointed, or you were frustrated, like. And you might start to discover different layers, and that might help you tap into, like, it's not really about this situation that is happening, but it's because maybe this happened when I was a kid, or maybe this happened over there. And so it just starts you to give awareness. So when I started using it, I actually heard it through a psychiatry podcast that she was talking about it. And I was like, well, I don't know, but I'll give it a try. I'm like, whatever, what I got to lose, right? But sure enough, like, I use it every day at lunch to help me ground myself so that I can start the rest of the day, like the afternoon, like with a clean slate, so that I don't feel like I'm still dragging everything. It just, and so whether you're sad or mad or happy or angry, or you're just trying to get yourself to start a task, like I feel like it's a way to tap into mindfulness, to tap into emotional regulation, because it just helps you feel better. They have some that say tap into peace, or into courage, or get me ready for a presentation, or um, and they even have some for like people who are going through IVF. Unfortunately,
Wow.
some of those things like can be so emotional for us, because as
Of
females
course.
we feel like we should be able to be a mom, like that should be the thing, right? And that could also put a lot of pressure as you're trying to have intimate setting with your husband. If all you're thinking is like, I can't even get pregnant, I can't even get pregnant, like that's going, those soundtracks that we have in our brain can really affect the connection, and can really affect um, that closefulness. So I really think that if you've never tried it, you should just give yourself the opportunity to be open-minded, because I know when I went through IVF, my first one was IVF. I was like up for anything. I was like, you name it, acupuncture, sleep backwards, whatever you need me to do to get pregnant. Like we get to a stage where we're so desperate for wanting something, and I know they always say just let go and it'll happen, and I'm like, how do you do that? I've never learned to just let go. Like
Yeah.
all my life I worked for what I got it. Like, what do you mean let go?
Right, right. I think definitely physicians are super A plus type personalities. We just can't just let go. Right? We don't that's not the way we work. We don't just let go.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. I can see how that, would work. I guess it's I don't know. Maybe it's shifting your attention to something else, right? Maybe so that you don't, like you said, focus on that one soundtrack. I think what you brought up is a very good point. Like in regard to infertility or trying to conceive, is that like, why am I not getting pregnant? Why is everybody able to get pregnant? Why am I not able to get pregnant? Why is it taking me so long? What's wrong with me? Blah blah blah. Right? So all those things are going through your head. So when you're able to regulate that, when you're able to calm those voices down, and even if you can't get rid of them, at least just put them aside for a little while, then you're able to be more mindful in whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's being intimate with your partner or your spouse, or focusing on one task at a time, right? And that probably also helps with overwhelm, right? You and I were both in a coaching program, and we know our business coach always says we don't do overwhelm. So, I guess just focusing on the task at hand and not letting your mind get so cluttered with everything else going on. I can see how that would work. So, and definitely help out with relationships, right?
Yes, because I don't know who taught us somewhere that multitasking was the way to go.
Yeah. It was like the worst advice ever, right? Worst.
Yeah, there's studies out there that show that if you literally just did one thing at a time and did one thing at a time for like 9 months, you would save 3 months. Had you done multitasking for those 9 months, it would take you a year. So you would literally save 3 whole months had you just done one thing at a time. But somehow we always keep thinking like we should be doing two things at once. Let me just start this and then I'll do that. And the thing is, that's still again delay. Like you still have that tab open, so it's not like you're fully concentrated on what you're doing. but
Yeah.
but with coaching, like my aim for my program is to
Yeah.
help physicians leave work at work, but it's never just about work. Like we once
Absolutely.
you're there, you realize again the guilt and the shame of you not feeling like you're the mom you want to be or the wife you want to be, because you're home but you're thinking about your charts, or you're at work but you're thinking, oh, I'm missing my kid's ball game or whatever, right? And so it's again realizing that those soundtracks really make a difference. And I'm not trying to say here, okay, let's just get rid of it, because we're not thought switching. We're just, like you said, learning to maybe lower down the volume on some of them,
Yeah.
or getting to a thought that is maybe a little bit more closer to where you want to be. So like sometimes, people find it weird to look in the mirror and say three beautiful things about yourself, but it's like if you can't even do a 2-minute exercise to tell yourself how amazing you are, like who else is going to do that for you? Like stop asking for validation outside of you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. I love everything you're talking about. And I think it's so pertinent. And I think it's pertinent to anyone, whether or not you have ADHD. And, I bet you most people have ADHD, to be honest, because with all of the social media and the constant switching and the instant gratification and going from one thing to the next thing, I mean, honestly, I probably have it too. I think that it's just so hard to focus on one thing. And that's why the practice of mindfulness is so important now, right? Is just to be able to focus on that one thing, get it done, get it completed, and then move on.
Yeah.
Um,
And
we'll see that. Yeah.
And usually, as females don't get diagnosed, unfortunately, with ADHD until later in age, then and usually the birth of a child, or when they become like into law school or med school or college or something where their systems is no longer working, or maybe they become the CEO of a company and they have all this admin stuff they have to do. That's usually when they get diagnosed, or when their kiddo, who's a teenager, is now getting diagnosed. They're like, wait, those kind of sound like me. And so sometimes it's real, people don't realize, right, that anxiety and depression might be there because you have uncontrolled ADHD.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so I'm just saying, just be curious, and like don't be afraid to go seek a third, fourth, fifth diagnosis or opinion per se,
Yeah.
because I don't want you to do what I did, sit there for 10 years and then just thinking that that there's nothing wrong with you. And again, not that it's wrong, but why would you want to work so much harder if there's other
Right.
resources out there for you?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, for somebody listening to this podcast and wondering whether or not they have, ADHD, what are some, I don't know, what are some helpful signs that you think, they should look for? And then what are some power thoughts you think that they should walk away with?
Yeah. So I feel like somebody time blindness is a big thing. If you're somebody um who has the best intentions but always shows up like 2 hours late or somebody who has 10,000 tasks that you haven't completed, or somebody who feels like you have so much potential, you just can't bring it to the finish line, I would consider for you to look into the possibility of ADHD, because you don't, intelligence has nothing to do
Sure.
with your ADHD. And it could be that look where you're amazing at. Like it could be that you're like an amazing like pianist, or you're an amazing surgeon who can stand there for 3 hours straight and not have to do anything because you're so hyper focused, but like you can't do XYZ. So it has to be in two areas of your life. It can't just be like at work or just that stuff. But usually people at work tend to mask it more, because then it's like you have a full battery, but at the end of the day it's drained. And so that's why when you get home you're just like and you wish you could have all the energy you had at work in the morning, but you just don't. So um again, whether you have ADHD or not, if you walk away with today thinking, okay, how can I refuel myself throughout the day? Like, what can I do to take care of me? Like, where can I do like a 2 minute meditation or a 2 minute quick breath work? Or can I just wash my hands slowly and like enjoy as a, like, do that breath for me? Or like, it sounds silly, but they really is you choosing what soundtrack you want to put, instead of just the soundtrack of like I'm late, or I'm behind, or I'm not keeping up with whatever. You're on purpose choosing joy and peace in that moment, and those few moments slowly can start to bring you back to gratitude, and can bring you back to that connection, so that you can have that connection with your spouse or with your kids. And sometimes when we're about to lose it because the kids are screaming or whatever, I mean, I start screaming with them and then laughing, and they're looking at me. I'm like, "What? I thought we were having a party." And then, so it's like what you make it mean. I was like, "I can scream longer," and they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "I know, right? It's fun." And then they're like, "Oh my god, mom, you're embarrassing me." And I'm like, "Really? Well, you started it." But being aware that if they're acting like that, or if we are acting like that, maybe something, we maybe have not eaten, maybe we haven't drank water, like maybe we haven't slept, like checking in with yourself and being mindful. Just like when you do with a kid, right? Like you need to realize you're going to love that kid unconditionally, so why not start loving you unconditionally?
I love that. I love that. Why not love yourself unconditionally? And that's something that we never think about because we're always giving to others. Um, and I love that why not love ourselves conditionally, unconditionally. That's fantastic. So I love that. So where can people find you? How can they reach out to you? What if they want to work with you? What do they do?
Awesome. So you can find me at ADHD-lifecoach.com. And like I said, you don't have to have ADHD to come work with me, but if you just want to come and tweak your system so that you can have better workflow at home and better workflow in the office, come help me. In my group, I actually have a declutter coach. So that's pretty amazing because they can personalize your stuff. So we have a virtual setup, but I can also, if you would like me to support your, I love to be a guest coach. I, sometimes go and help and talk about emotions or boundaries or time management. So I can help you in that way, or I can help create workshops or retreats for your settings. And I actually have my first international retreat that I'll be having in Costa Rica in 2 weeks,
Nice.
May 1st through the 6th. And um, I decided that CME didn't have to be boring, and that we could do the CME as we are hiking through the Areola volcano, or as we going down the river float safari looking at monkeys, or as we're
Wow.
in the hot springs, or as we're, why not? Why not do it in a way that you will remember that you decided to evaluate where you're at and where you're going, and doing it with the people around you, a community that just gets you, and so that you don't feel judged. And as you and I know, community is key.
Yeah.
And And the pandemic, I really then highlighted that fact that, um, your family is not just somebody blood, right? But somebody who you connect energetically with, and who's there to enhance you. And those that are depleting us, we might have to cut some ties
Mhm.
sometimes.
That's right. That's right. When we have to cut that cord, right? As an OB, we need to
Yes.
cut that cord. That is fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And do you have any Instagram or TikTok handles or anything like that that you are on that people can choose to follow you on?
Yes, Beyond ADHD Life Coach. I have a podcast that is called Beyond ADHD: A Physician's Perspective. So if you're somebody with ADHD, or if you have somebody who you support that has ADHD, or you just have some hacks because you figured it out, come tell us, please, so that we can all learn and enhance each other.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Mercado, for being here and for sharing your knowledge about ADHD because I know I learned a lot and I'm sure everyone listening did as well. So thank you again. And well, we are done here and it's been real and really intimate. And remember that this is not meant to be any type of medical advice. So if you feel like you may have ADHD or need help, please reach out to your healthcare provider and definitely feel free to be assessed. And until next time, this is the Muslim Sex Podcast. So, thank you for listening to the podcast and make sure you leave us a review, share and like the podcast. And if you leave me a review, I'd love to shout you out on social media. So, be sure that you share it with all your friends. And thanks for listening.